Tonight, a temporary ban on fruit in some school lunches leaves a bitter taste.
Banning fruit from lunch boxes basically for the entirety of metropolitan Adelaide, we've got to give parents some notice.
It's a very hard hit, there's no doubt about it, but we've got to get on top of this.
Also tonight, the homicide squad investigates the death of a man at an apartment block in Adelaide CBD. A white-knuckle landing as the pilot relies on his wits and skill to avoid catastrophe at Parafield Airport.
It's a very challenging manoeuvre in daytime, so having it to do it at night makes it that much more difficult.
And the Strikers into the Big Bash finals as skipper Alex Carey is picked in the Test squad for South Africa. Good evening, Jessica Harmsen with ABC News. School's back and there's been plenty to learn for both kids and parents. Differing coronavirus restrictions between schools have complicated the first day in new surroundings for some, while a fruit fly outbreak has made the task of packing a lunchbox even harder to navigate. As she prepares for her final year at Clapham Primary, Harriet McNichol's lunchbox looks a little different.
Unfortunately, the kids can't take a whole list of fruits that may contain fruit fly to school, so I think we're left with carrot sticks and celery until Easter, so that should be really interesting.
Clapham is one of many schools across Adelaide taking fruit off the menu after fruit fly outbreaks across the city.
It's a bit annoying because I normally take like an apples and strawberries.
I don't really eat too much sometimes, so I'm all right with less fruit because of the fruit flies.
Taking fruit out of your home is banned in 9 outbreak areas across metropolitan Adelaide. It's strongly discouraged in a broader suspension zone which covers most of the city. But some schools aren't drawing that distinction, writing to all parents this week, urging them to leave fruit in the bowl.
If you're going to make such a significant change, banning fruit from lunch boxes basically for the entirety of metropolitan Adelaide, you've got to give parents some notice.
I'm very confident that a vast majority of our schools around South Australia were able to pass on that message from PIRSA.
The horticultural industry has slammed the direction, saying there's already been a 30% drop in sales. Growers will meet the government on Friday to push to overturn the ban, saying simple steps like wrapping fruit would make it safe to take to school.
So we've got to do everything we can. It's a very hard hit, there's no doubt about it, but we've got to get on top of this.
It's not just lunchboxes parents will have to learn to navigate. From today, adult visitors to high schools will have to sign in with a QR code. The process will apply in primary schools from week 3. And despite easing many COVID restrictions across the community, the government's leaving it up to schools to determine whether parents can walk their children into the classroom.
Reception, they're giving us a little bit of leniency in the first week. We are allowed to, but we're not allowed to stay for too long.
A bit of extra comfort sorely needed for some. Alina Ecott, ABC News, Adelaide. There are more changes on the way in the classroom, with state primary schools expected to enforce a mobile phone ban in coming weeks. Several regional high schools are also taking phones out of students' pockets and locking them in pouches, in a move principals hope will boost learning and reduce bullying.
First day back for the students at Port Lincoln High School. And already there's a hard lesson.
We are very, very concerned about the inappropriate use of mobile phones and really the distraction that they cause.
The school's taking action, spending thousands of dollars on these special magnetic pouches. Students' phones will be placed inside at the start of the school day, and the phone will remain locked inside until the final bell.
What we're finding is large slabs of learning time are not being utilised because of the distraction, so removing the distraction was something we thought worth investing in. It may not be popular, but even some of the students agree the move is needed.
In the long run, it's going to be really beneficial because we, undeniably do have a mobile phone problem here.
It'll take some time to get adjusting to, and we'll have to work out a few kinks in how it's delivered and how it's rolled out.
Port Lincoln is the 3rd regional high school to opt into the phone pouch system. State primary schools have taken a step further, banning phones altogether. Those schools that have taken action already say the restrictions curb more than just phone addiction.
There has been a reduction in cyberbullying that is going on during school time because the devices are locked away.
A screen time ban to keep school time on track. Evelyn Leckie, ABC News, Port Lincoln.
Police say a man found dead inside his housing trust unit in Adelaide CBD was murdered in a vicious and targeted attack. Major crime detectives won't say how the victim was killed, but they're investigating whether it was gang-related.
Forensic teams and major crime detectives spent the day searching this Sturt Street apartment block where Nathan Russell was murdered. The 46-year-old's body was found in his unit last night by a friend who went to check on him.
Nathan was targeted at that address and he was subjected to a vicious attack, which has unfortunately caused his death.
Police believe he was killed sometime between late Monday and Tuesday evening. Several items have been seized from the property and detectives are investigating whether it involved drugs or gangs.
Investigators believe that people have knowledge of what has occurred to Nathan and/or they have knowledge of the circumstances leading up to his death.
Friends of Mr. Russell describe him as a friendly, devoted father.
Family man that helps out homeless people and as well, and you know he's got his own issues, but at the end of the day it's about the kids, you know, they won't get to see their dad again.
Neighbours say the apartment block has a notorious reputation.
There's been a lot of problems in the block in the past. Got a lot of drug and alcohol, and there's issues with mental health and that sort of thing in the building, unfortunately.
Very hectic units, these ones. Lots of things happen behind those doors.
Outside, friends paid tribute.
Miss you, Nathan.
Remembrance of the person who was.
Police are still searching for a motive and want people who saw anything suspicious to contact Crime Stoppers. Richard Davies, ABC News, Adelaide.
In an Australian first, an Adelaide court is considering whether an order a pedophile to compensate the children he abused in Southeast Asia. 47-year-old Jeffrey Moyle has admitted 9 child sex offences stemming from his abuse of girls in Cambodia between 2002 and 2005. The sentencing judge today questioned whether he can compensate the Cambodian survivors as part of the criminal process because they'd been unable to sue the predator in civil proceedings. The case will be back before the court in March for further argument. A flying instructor and his student have escaped injury after performing a dramatic emergency landing overnight on 2 wheels. The pair had to circle Parafield Airport more than 20 times because the nose wheel failed to drop.
A night flight designed to test a pilot's skills soon becomes a test of nerves. The Beech B-55 touches down on 2 wheels before its nose hits the deck, sending sparks flying. Fire crews rush to the plane as it grinds to a halt on the Parafield tarmac, but thankfully they're not needed. The instructor and trainee pilot aboard the twin-engine plane are safe.
Pilot did exactly what they were trained to do, and I take my hat off to them because they did an exceptional job just based on what I could see from the footage.
The pair had flown from Waikerie and tried to land much earlier, but had problems lowering the undercarriage and radioed for help. A fly past allowed airport staff to confirm the nose wheel was not in place. The crew circled Parafield 21 times after midnight to buy time. Experienced pilot Doug Drury was woken by the commotion overhead.
Anybody who can walk away from a landing like that is a hero.
The flying school which owns the plane praised the professionalism of the instructing pilot, saying his rigorous training and years of experience paid off under pressure.
It was done very well. It's done by the book. He would have taken a measured response. It's something you try to train into people as they come through their training because you can't panic. There's a solution and it's just trying to find the best one.
It's not yet known exactly what went wrong with the aircraft or whether a component of the undercarriage had broken during the flight. It has now been quarantined for investigation and will be thoroughly examined for any mechanical problems. A lesson neither pilot is likely to forget. Candice Prosser, ABC News, Adelaide.
Staff at a luxury Adelaide car dealership say an arson attack was racially motivated. A Mercedes and BMW were gutted in the blaze, which was lit just before 6 this morning at the Motor Hut at Somerton Park. 2 other cars were damaged. The Mercedes was being sold for $189,000. Offensive messages were spray painted on the side of the business. Police say it's too early to speculate on a motive. The new Australian owners of RM Williams have guaranteed the 400 jobs at the bootmaker's factory in Adelaide's north. Mining magnate Andrew Twiggy Forrest and his wife Nicola visited the Salisbury factory for the first time since buying the famous brand from an overseas-based private equity firm in October. The Forrests say they want to expand the current facilities, where around 1,200 boots are made each day, but they're yet to come up with a business plan.
We walk around with such pride. People have been working here up to 40 years, and they are as grateful that we're back involved as we are that they're still working here, and they can have every confidence in their long-term employment.
The new owners say they also want to ensure all RM Williams products are Australian-made. About 2% are made offshore. It's another sign of Australia's COVID bounce back. Spending in the final months of 2020 increased, exceeding economists' expectations. December's headline consumer price index jumped by 0.9%, and that's the figure for the whole year as well, despite Australia enduring its first recession in almost 3 decades.
Kamal Joshi knows one way Australians have been spending their money. The greengrocer says a lag in international shipments and a lack of workers to pick local fruit means prices for our 2 a day have increased.
When there is more demand and less supply, my farmers and growers and agents, they increase up their prices, and then we have to, and it passes to us, so we had to increase the price.
As spending on fruit increased, the broader food category only rose slightly as vegetable prices fell. Spending on childcare rose again. Parents are now picking up the tab with the end of the government's subsidy. A tax hike meant spending on tobacco rose. And as state borders came down, Australians went on holiday. And spending on new houses rose as the government's home builder package was rolled out. The main drag was power prices. A one-off $600 credit for West Australians' power bills led to the strongest ever quarterly fall in electricity spending. Inflation of 0.9% for the last quarter is good news for economic recovery. But without one-offs like taxes and government subsidies, the actual figure is much less impressive.
The economy is recovering, and it's certainly not dropping, which is obviously very welcome to see, but it's certainly not really strong either.
After vaccines are approved, the rollout of the vaccine is critical to economic recovery, and the government has begun promoting the jab. Encouraged by plans to distribute vaccines worldwide, the International Monetary Fund has revised up its forecasts for the global economy, predicting it'll grow by 5.5% this year. It says our economy will increase by 3.5%.
And that is a function of our effective management of the health crisis, but also the unprecedented financial and economic support being provided by the Morrison government.
Support that'll run out at the end of March. Rachel Papazoni, ABC News.
The Australian government has urged the European Union not to disrupt the supply of COVID-19 vaccines to the rest of the world. Brussels has indicated it may restrict exports of vaccines produced in Europe if pharmaceutical companies under-deliver on their promises. Europe correspondent Linton Besser reports.
It might just be the most precious manufactured good on earth, and now a slowdown in the production of coronavirus vaccines has lit a political fire.
The European Union wants to know exactly which doses have been produced where by AstraZeneca so far, and if or to whom they have been delivered.
AstraZeneca has told its European customers to expect fewer doses of the vaccine than originally promised, and Brussels is not happy.
The answers of the company have not been satisfactory so far.
The EU has now flagged it may restrict exports of its own Pfizer vaccine, which is manufactured in Belgium.
In the future, all companies producing vaccines against COVID-19 in the EU will have to provide early notification whenever they want to export vaccines to third countries.
We expect and hope that our EU friends will honour all contracts.
The same vaccine is due in Australia later next month, but local authorities are unfazed by the European stoush.
At the moment, we don't have any concerns about the supply that Pfizer has coming into Australia.
Here in Britain, a grim new milestone. According to its statistics office, more than 100,000 people have now been killed by coronavirus. 60-year-old Femi Akinola was one of them. His son, Lobby Akinola, is frustrated by the UK's repeated failure to contain the virus.
The pain of losing someone you love is devastating. And to think that 100,000 people have died, people whose lives have been wrecked.
Britain's hospitals remain at breaking point, with more than 20,000 new cases overnight.
People need to know it is not a game. It is frightening.
Barbara Roberts died with coronavirus yesterday and wanted this message broadcast.
Just wear your mask and wash your hands. That's all it is, isn't it? That's all they've got to do.
Linton Besser, ABC News, London.
Still to come this hour, the vulnerable Australians still stranded overseas and losing hope.
It was heartbreaking to see that you had a flight and then to have that taken away with you within seconds.
I feel that if you've got money, you've got more chance of getting home.
Also, Dr Norman Swan examines how the worldwide scramble for COVID vaccines will affect Australia. That's coming up.
Indonesia has recorded 1 million coronavirus infections, and in cities like Jakarta, hospitals are nearing capacity. The world's fourth most populous country is the hardest hit in Southeast Asia, and the low testing rate means the true number of infections is likely much higher. The death toll is now above 28,000. Hospitals are turning patients away due to a lack of beds and ventilators. Indonesia has begun an ambitious campaign to vaccinate up to 180 million people within a year. Thousands of farmers have clashed with police in the Indian capital, New Delhi, as a protest over agricultural reform turned violent. Protest leaders have condemned the violence but vowed to continue their demonstrations. South Asia correspondent James Oaten reports.
Full steam ahead. After campaigning outside the nation's capital, tens of thousands of protesters made their way into Delhi for the first time. They arrived with reinforcements.
We came here for our rights. This is the first time a government has forced farmers to hit the streets.
The protesters had negotiated an agreed route with police to enter, then exit the city. At first, there was a sense of exhilaration. But hopes of a peaceful protest were dashed when thousands burst through police lines. Police fired tear gas to try and disperse crowds, but they couldn't stop the barrage of heavy equipment. The protesters made their way to the historic Red Fort before finally dispersing. The reforms would erode large wholesale markets, something the government says will empower farmers.
If the government markets are abolished, then where will we sell our produce? We will be left at the mercy of private buyers.
The government really ignored the protests for months. For months on end, it behaved as though nothing was happening.
The government has recently offered to halt the laws for 18 months. Farmers are unwavering.
The Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seen by many as a hard man, and his government is renowned for rarely backing down. But the concessions being offered suggest the farmers' campaign is working, and that's only reinvigorated their efforts.
James Oaten, ABC News, Delhi.
In Brisbane, a 17-year-old male has been charged with 2 counts of murder after a couple was run down. 31-year-old Catherine Ledbetter and her partner, 37-year-old Matthew Field, were crossing the street in the Bayside suburb of Alexandra Hills. Police alleged the driver had stolen a car, then ran a red light at speed and crashed into the pair, who died at the scene.
You know, here's 2 people going about their business innocently on Australia Day, walking their dogs, you know. They should be entitled to do that.
The couple was expecting their first child, and police say they're looking at upgrading the charges. Witnesses described the scene as catastrophic.
I was in shock, and I got the lady that called AAA down the road.
The teenage driver appeared in the Children's Court today and will reappear in March. A former National Australia Bank employee has been jailed for 8 years over a scam that netted her millions of dollars. Rosemary Rogers was arrested 2 years ago after a whistleblower alerted the bank to fraudulent transfers.
Less than 2 years since turning herself in, fronting court for the last time, the disgraced former Chief of Staff to 2 NAB CEOs, Rosemary Rogers, arrived bags packed. Her co-accused, Helen Rosamond, ran Human Group, a company that provided functions and events services to NAB. Rogers, from Melbourne, pled guilty to a systemic and long-term defrauding of the bank of millions of dollars. Miss Rosamond would send invoices to Rogers, which the court heard the Chief of Staff knew were false, overinflated and exceeding legitimate expenses. Rogers ended up receiving more than $5 million in benefits from Miss Rosamond as an inducement or reward to ensure Human Group maintained a contract with NAB. Those inducements included a $620,000 trip with family to the United States, a $160,000 trip to Europe, a BMW SUV, a boat and the purchase of homes and renovations. Rogers showed little emotion while being sentenced, with her eyes fixed to the floor. Judge Paul Conlon said he accepted she had shown genuine remorse since being arrested. He also said he found it absolutely staggering that the fraud wasn't detected by some appropriate system of internal auditing by NAB. The bank said it has now made changes to strengthen controls in our organisation, including additional checks on expenses. Helen Rosamond is awaiting trial. Rogers will be eligible for parole in late 2025. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Sydney.
On to finance now, and the local share market fell back today. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, the market fell 0.7%, and mining and oil stocks were all sold down quite briskly. Smash repair company AMA Group had a praying for a very unusual reason. The board put out a statement headed "Update in relation to the CEO, Andrew Hopkins," and revealed that in September they had received a protected disclosure from an employee and engaged a big accounting firm to undertake a forensic investigation, which has now been completed. The result of it was not revealed. However, last night Mr Hopkins made an urgent application to the federal court alleging that he was being oppressed as a minority shareholder. The court ordered that he couldn't be sacked, pending a further hearing. Investors took all this in this morning and said, "Bugger this, we're off." Meanwhile, the stock on everyone's lips in New York at the moment is GameStop, a video game store that's now selling its games online. It's gone up 3,600% in 6 months in a frenzy of speculation, out-Teslaing Tesla and prompting market pundits to declare that the market has gone mad and to ring the bell for the top. The New York market did actually go down last night, but just a bit, while Asian markets rose. Iron ore and gold fell on commodity markets while oil went up and wheat sprouted, and the Aussie dollar was steady at 77.3 US cents. The IMF upgraded its forecasts for the Australian economy last night from 3 to 3.5% for this year and 2.8 to 2.9% for next year. The report included this chart. Now, it shows the IMF's forecast for China and advanced economies now and a year ago. It's the clearest thing I've seen yet of how China has snapped back and the rest of the world has not. And that's finance.
South Australian wicketkeeper Alex Carey is being groomed to replace current Australian Test captain Tim Paine and will join the Australian squad to tour South Africa next month. Carey's sparkling Big Bash form with the bat helps secure his spot on the tour, which will only go ahead if COVID safety requirements can be satisfied. Carey replaces fellow keeper-turned-batsman Matthew Wade in the squad, but says he's concentrating on his keeping rather than the vacant specialist batting spot.
I'm a part of my first Test squad, which is really exciting for me to be amongst those players. Hopefully it means I'm a step closer to having a dream come true and playing Test cricket.
Travis Head is also in the Test squad. Both he and Carey have the Big Bash to focus on for now. The Adelaide Strikers facing an elimination final against Brisbane Heat on Friday night. Cricket Australia has confirmed that members of the Indian cricket team were racially abused during the third cricket test in Sydney earlier this month. But the spectators who were forced to leave the stadium weren't responsible for the abuse. David Mark has more.
When Indian fast bowler Mohammad Siraj accused spectators of racial abuse during day 4 of the third test here at the SCG, it threatened to derail the test series. Play was held up for more than 10 minutes while police and security guards spoke to spectators. Eventually, 6 men were ejected. Today, Cricket Australia confirmed that Siraj and other players were racially abused. But in a report from its head of integrity and security to the International Cricket Council, it found the 6 men ejected weren't responsible for that abuse. A spokeswoman for Cricket Australia said the organisation has told the men of its findings. New South Wales Police has also been investigating the allegations, but has found no evidence to support any prosecution. But Cricket Australia's investigation is continuing as it continues to search through CCTV footage, ticketing information and interviews with spectators. Cricket Australia has once again apologised to the Indian cricket team. David Mark, ABC News, Sydney.
The Adelaide Crows are sweating on the availability of star midfielder Ebony Marinoff before finalising their team for Saturday's AFLW season opener against the West Coast Eagles. The Crows will tomorrow mount an appeal against Marinoff's 3-match suspension, a distraction as the side prepares for one of the most even seasons in the competition's short history.
A day out from the AFLW season start and there's a buoyant mood. The Crows are ready for a trip to Perth but don't yet know whether they'll be joined by Ebony Marinoff, who'll tomorrow appeal against her 3-match ban for this bump on GWS Irish recruit Brid Stack.
Felt we had no option other than to pursue the whole process all the way through and give her every opportunity to be available.
Stack's injury caps off a trying few months for the Giants. COVID's forced them to relocate to Adelaide at the same time as they mourned the death of player Jacinda Barclay. Sunday's game against Fremantle in Perth will be a tribute match for the former Western Australian.
Grief is a really strange thing. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. We deeply miss Jacinda. We know the way in which she played her football was extremely frightening. She was fearless, she was a competitor, and that's how when we cross the line, that's how we want to honour Jacinda.
The rapidly improving AFLW will for the first time be ticketed, with adults paying $10. Early ticket sales indicating fans will back the move.
Fans will get around it. We've only got 3,500 that we can hold at Norwood Oval, so we're hearing that they're selling out pretty fast, so people need
if they sell out in Victoria, you can't imagine they're not going to sell out in South Australia. Like, really. Get around us.
Carlton and Collingwood open the season tomorrow night. Matthew Smith, ABC News, Adelaide.
On to the weather details now, and thanks to Gail Peters for sending us tonight's photo taken in the Flinders. It was slightly cooler than expected in Adelaide today. The top temperature was 27.5 degrees just before 5 this afternoon after an overnight low of 15.3. There were a couple of thundery showers about the northwest of the state, but it was mainly fine elsewhere. Tops ranged from 19 degrees at Parawa to 39 at Moomba. Cloud over northern and inland parts of WA is delivering heavy downpours over the Kimberley. That cloud over northern Queensland with a slow-moving low will continue to generate areas of heavy rain and storms there. Further south, another trough should bring areas of wet weather to our state. Unsettled conditions are expected about the southeast of the country tomorrow. Showers are forecast for most capital cities along the eastern seaboard, but it should be sunny with 31 degrees for Perth. Back home, rain forecast for the west coast, northwest pastoral and Eyre Peninsula. Thunderstorms in the west, while it'll be very hot in the northeast. 36 degrees for Coober Pedy and Port Augusta. Possible showers developing later in the day about the Yorke Peninsula and southeast. Keith's heading for 33 degrees, 24 in Port Lincoln. The Bureau has issued a strong wind warning for the far west coast and lower southeast coast for tomorrow. And in Adelaide, we're in for a mostly sunny morning before showers arrive later in the day, a top of 31 degrees after a low tonight of 19. On the waters, east to southeasterly winds to 20 knots, shifting south to southwesterly in the afternoon, seas to 1.5 metres. Sunrise at 6:30 and sunset about 14 hours later. Looking a bit further ahead, those showers should clear early on Friday to bring a mostly sunny weekend. 26 degrees for Saturday, up to 28 on Sunday, with conditions to remain fine for early next week. And that is the latest from the Adelaide newsroom. Thanks for your company. Stay with us. Laura Tingle is next with 7:30.
Welcome to